Back in May, Gregor Robertson, Mark Carney's housing minister, was asked if he wanted the price of housing to come down. And he said no. How do you balance reducing the cost of housing for young families, but also protecting what may be the only nest egg for some seniors and boomers? Ezra Levant here for Rebel News. I'm in Brampton, Ontario, a suburb of Toronto, where Pierre Poilievre was having a news conference about housing prices and his new housing policy. Let me play for you a few highlights of his announcement moments ago.
After a decade of liberal taxes, liberal spending, out-of-control liberal immigration, reckless crime policies, the Canadian promise is really broken. We see an entire generation priced out of home ownership. We see rampaging crime in our streets. We see overcrowded communities as a result of immigration adding people 3 times faster than we add homes and jobs. We see job losses. We see the worst economy in the G7. That's the promise of Canada, broken after a decade of Liberals. Now, Mark Carney promised to be different. Instead, he's worse than Justin Trudeau. He said he would spend less, but his first estimates bill has the government spending 8% more, with the lion's share going to high-priced consultants and bureaucracy. And so today I join with my Shadow Minister of Housing, Scott Aitchison, to call for the Liberals to immediately reverse the policies that have caused this new housing crisis with a 4-point plan. 1, axe the federal sales tax for all home buyers. I hear someone over here is giving a round of applause. She might be buying a home soon. For all home buyers, not just first-time home buyers, and for homes up to $1.3 million. 2, axe the capital gains tax on any monies reinvested in home building. So if a business or an individual sells an asset, they enjoy a capital gain, but they reinvest it in home building, there should be no capital gains tax. This will cause a building boom right across the country. 3, incentivize municipalities to free up land, speed up permits, and cut their own development charges. The Prime Minister claimed that he was going to cut development charges nationwide by half. Since he took office, those charges have actually gone up. I'm calling for the Prime Minister to put the resources in the budget so that we can incentivize municipalities to cut the taxes they charge on building new homes. And 4th, get immigration under control. We can no longer add people 3 times faster than we add homes. We're going to continue to have shortages. These 4 steps will reverse the Liberal housing hell, the disaster that has destroyed the dream of home ownership over the last 10 years. We are prepared to work with any party that will adopt these common sense ideas so that we can unleash a real building boom in this country that will mean bigger paychecks for our trades workers, our realtors, mortgage brokers, suppliers. All of them will benefit. The much suffering logging industry will have new demand for its products. So will the steel and aluminum producers have a new market right here at home. You know the great thing about home building? It's Trump-proof. You can't claim that Donald Trump is to blame for housing that happens here, because he cannot put tariffs on housing that we keep in our own country. It is, by definition, a homegrown industry. So when we're facing a losing trade war with China, with the United States, and with others, why not build more here at home? Most of the materials that go in these homes are Canadian materials. We have the land, the labor, and the lumber. And there's no foreign government that can tariff the construction of a Canadian home. This should be the #1 priority. Get building here. Nobody can stop us from doing it. And that's why we're calling on the government to adopt our plan for a new home building boom right across this country by removing the taxes, the red tape, making this the fastest and easiest place to get approved to build a home that will be a wonderful refuge for young families starting out.
Those are a variation of a theme Some of those points were similar to ones announced earlier by Poilievre. A CBC reporter asked what the difference was, and here's what Poilievre said.
Michelle Song, CBC News. Mr. Poilievre, how is what you are saying today different from the legislation you proposed before the last election?
It has a lot in common. I put forward a bill in the House of Commons called the Build Homes and Not Bureaucracy Act, which would incentivize municipalities to speed up permits, free up land, and cut development charges. But in addition to that, today I'm proposing to axe the sales tax for all home buyers, not just first-time home buyers. Second, to increase the limit to 1.3 million, because unfortunately, in the GTA today, as amazing as it sounds, you can't get the average house for $1 million. I mean, if I had said that to you 10 years ago, you'd have laughed me out of the room. You would have said it would be so ridiculous to spend $1 million on a middle-class home. But after a decade of liberal housing inflation, that's the reality we face. And then we're also calling for axing the federal capital gains tax for anyone who reinvests in home building or any other reinvestment in Canada. This will cause an incredible boom. It will be like economic rocket fuel. You imagine the number of investors who will sell a dormant asset knowing they won't have to pay tax on it as long as they put it to work building houses in communities like this one. That would mean jobs. And by the way, this will help a lot of people. You might be surprised it's not just big corporations and extremely wealthy investors. A lot of our tradespeople, they buy houses, fix them up, and then resell them as an improved product. They would be able to get out zero capital gains tax as long as they reinvest in another home to add even more supply. So that is the difference between my original proposal and this new enhanced proposal, because the crisis is much bigger now under Mark Carney than it was under Justin Trudeau, and we as Conservatives are here to provide solutions to fix that. Thank you.
It's true. Housing in Toronto and Vancouver is insane. The average house is $1 million. There's no way that someone out of high school, out of university can scrape together the down payment unless they have serious financial help from a parent or a relative. There's just no way to do it. So what happens is young people, it's not a failure to launch. They can't launch. They can't get started with their lives. If you're living at home, how are you going to get married? How are you going to have kids? How are you going to start things? And it's really delayed marriage and thus delayed childbearing. And, I think it's really taken an attack at the family unit. I mean, you cannot have a family if you do not have a home, and that goes straight to pricing. Now, one of the things that Poilievre talked about was immigration. He said that's one of his 4 ways of tackling the problem was to reducing immigration numbers, and that's obviously true. Simple supply and demand tells us that when you bring 1 or 2 million people a year into a country and only have a fraction of that in terms of new housing built, of course housing is going to go up in price. And not just that, but what was traditionally a one-family home will now have 7 mattresses for different international students. Like it's really the third worldification of Canadian housing. But I had a question for Poilievre. I was trying to ask something on the subject of home building. I have another question I want to ask him another day about immigration, but I thought, let's ask him about housing. Here's the question I put to him, and here's his answer. Hi there, Ezra Levant from Rebel News. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Back in May, Gregor Robertson, Mark Carney's housing minister, was asked if he wanted the price of housing to come down, and he said no. How do you balance reducing the cost of housing for young families, but also protecting what may be the only nest egg for some seniors and boomers? Where do you draw the balance? How would you like to see pricing actually look for the average home in Toronto or Vancouver?
So, first of all, I just think we need to acknowledge that it is incredible that Mark Carney would pick Gregor Robertson as his housing minister after that, when he was the mayor, Vancouver's housing costs went up by 150%, driven almost entirely by municipal taxes. So the guy who created the worst housing market in North America, forget Canada, by far the most expensive housing market in North America, more expensive than New York City, Los Angeles, Chicago. Carney says that's exactly who we need in charge of housing. Like, talk about failing up. So the first thing that would be different is I would have never named someone like Gregor Robertson. He is the exact epitome of everything wrong with housing in Canada today. As for your question about balancing keeping home prices up versus them coming down, look, the money from a home today does not go to the buyer, the seller, or the builder. It goes to the government. We have to, it's like today, right now, the housing costs are too low for builders to build and too high for buyers to buy. And you would say, well, how could it be both of those things? Well, because the lion's share is going to the government. It doesn't go to these guys. The guys who swing the hammers back here, they're not getting the money. The money is going to government bureaucrats, municipally, provincially, and federally. And what I'm saying is, let's cut the government cost out of housing. Get rid of the sales tax, cut the development charges in half, speed up the permits, zero tax on reinvested gains. If you get the government cost out of building homes, then the buyer, the seller, and the builder will all be winners at the same time.
It's true. Gregor Robertson is just atrocious. And if you missed it, here's his April statement where he just said, no, I don't want the prices to go down. Here's what he said.
Affordable housing.
Do you think home prices need to go down?
No, I think that we need to deliver more supply, make sure the market is stable. It's a huge part of our economy. We need to be delivering more affordable housing. The government of Canada has not been building affordable housing since the 90s, and we've created a huge shortage across Canada. That's where the big need is right now, and I'm very encouraged that the Prime Minister and our commitment right now in government is to double construction and focus on the affordable side.
How realistic do you think?
Now, fair enough. It turns out that he has millions of dollars worth of homes as his personal investment. He's no dummy. He's a liberal. He doesn't want the value of his investments to go down. But it's a striking thing for the Minister of Housing, who has said that increasing housing supply and affordability is his top priority. It's shocking to hear him say he does not want the prices of housing to come down. And I don't really understand what he meant there about more affordable housing, but keeping that price up. I don't even know what that means unless he's thinking of having millions of government homes or something that only poor people can live in. But if you're just a struggling middle-class person, you're not poor enough. Like, he just didn't explain that. It was so bizarre, but it hit me. Who voted for Mark Carney and the Liberals? Well, the boomers did. I mean, every poll shows that young people, especially young men, are worried about life in Canada economically. They're worried they can't get a job. They don't like the foreign competitors with temporary foreign workers and international students. Young people are the most open to Conservatives, and I remember some polling that young people were actually the most open to Donald Trump's audacious invitation to join America, and that's got to be for economic reasons. Whereas if you are 60 or 70 or 80 years old, maybe you've got a bit of a pension, but your real pension is your home. You bought the home in the 50s or the 60s or the 70s when you could do it on a one income family where one parent stayed home. It was a traditional family. A guy gets a job at a factory. It's his job for 30 years. He retires with a pension, his mortgage paid off, and that's his nest egg. And so there are millions of Canadians that, and I'm not criticizing, I'm just saying that's their wealth. And so on the one hand, I can understand why Gregor Robertson doesn't want to spook the Liberal voting base, which is boomers and seniors, and say, yeah, we want the value of your home to come down, because that would put a number of people in a pickle. And let's say you just bought a home at the peak of the market and got the maximum mortgage, and now prices are starting to come down. You're underwater. But at the same time, how can you keep your promise to young Canadians to make life affordable if you're not going to bring it down? Now, Poilievre's answer to me was interesting, and it took me a while to think about it. He's basically saying it's possible for both home buyers and home sellers to win if you take out the massive cost that is government. He asserted several times today that actually the largest part of a home price is not the construction, it's not the land, it's the paperwork, it's the red tape, it's the government, it's the bureaucracy, it's the taxes. I actually find that a little hard to believe, and I'm not denying it. I want to look at those numbers. How could it be? Like, I mean, these are nice homes, but they're somewhat modest. They're not grand. They're not huge. They have 2-car garages, and they're very pretty. But I don't know what these cost. But if it's the average price in the Greater Toronto area, these are more than $1 million. And I put it to you, if you go on a website like realtor.com and go to some place in Texas like Fort Worth and see what you can get for $1 million, you will get an enormous acreage with a 5,000 square foot home with, all the luxuries. I mean, I know a lot of politicians do this. They can compare what you get for $1 million, or I don't even think you can buy something for $250,000 in Toronto. It would be like a shoebox. So is it true that this building, if it's for sale for $1 million, that half of that is taxes and lawyers and red tape? It's so staggering. I have to confirm it before I believe it. But if we take Pierre Poilievre's answer at face value, if you can remove that cost from it, it is true that the price would come down for the buyer, but there would be enough there for the seller to do well. But I think that only happens go forward. If you're a senior today and your house is worth $1 million today, removing taxes and red tape on the construction of your home is not going to help you now, because that happened years ago. I think the only answer is to have a slow deflation in housing prices, slow enough that you're not massacring seniors and their only nest egg, but fast enough that young people can actually find some hope. And if I had to choose between those two, I would choose the young people. The whole point of society is to provide for children, to have children have a better life than their generation before them. And I fear that our generation may be the first where that's no longer true. Every generation had more hope for the future, that their kids would be wealthier, better educated, happier. And that really was the case for generations. I mean, if you look at a typical house, the size of a house that was built in the 30s or 40s compared to the size of a house built in the 60s and 70s, there's no comparison. Our wealth has shot up, but I think that it's stagnated. And as we've mentioned on our show before, we're actually in a recession on an individual basis. I don't know. I found today's press conference not as powerful, because I think a lot of the ideas were introduced by Poilievre before. The striking thing I heard was Poilievre's assertion that half of the price of each of these, like hundreds of thousands of dollars, is taxes and red tape. Could be. I don't know if his answer is enough, though, because I don't know how a senior can sell their home today if and still get ahead if the price is going down. And it's got to go down for young people to get in. I think the changes he's talking about will take years to take effect. And they're not all at the federal level. A lot of the levers he wants to pull are at the municipal level. I think the only way to solve this problem is what an economist would say: supply and demand. If you really want housing to become more affordable, don't bring in 2 million strangers to your country. Even if they're staying 7 to a house on mattresses, it's going to make everything more expensive.
Are you concerned that the consensus in Canada on immigration is slipping? And what would you do, what will you do as a opposition leader to address this issue?
Thank you. Very good question. It is really sad what has happened to the immigration system over the last decade. Before this Liberal government, there was a consensus. Canadians welcomed immigrants in generous numbers, but in numbers that we could absorb. We had enough housing, health care, and jobs for people who came in. Everyone integrated well, lived in beautiful neighborhoods side by side, all different faces from different places and races getting along in harmony. It's incredible to think, we had the system of immigration that was the envy of the world. Literally, other countries from all around the world said, how did Canada do it? 10 years of Liberal government, the rest of the world is looking at us and saying, how did the Liberals screw this up so badly? They've been adding people 3 times faster than homes and jobs, which has created shortages. They brought in too many too fast. They've allowed massive abuses of the international student, temporary foreign worker, and asylum claim system, with rampant fraud that happened right under their nose. And as a result, our youth can't find jobs or homes. And so it is very sad that the Liberals have been able to destroy the system so badly in such a short time. Mark Carney promised to be different. Instead, he's worse. He's kept Justin Trudeau's immigration numbers. He's allowing corporations to bring in a record number of temporary foreign workers this year at a time when youth employment numbers are their worst in 3 decades. So while our young people can't find jobs, employers are able to exploit temporary foreign workers by giving them lower wages and terrible working conditions. Let me be clear. Immigrants are not to blame for this mess. They simply followed the rules that the Liberals created, or the lack of rules. They just want to have a better life. And in many cases, they are the victims of a system that abuses and rips them off at the same time as destabilizing our housing, job market, and social services. So the blame does not rest with immigrants or with the broader Canadian population. It is 100% the result of reckless and irresponsible Liberal decisions. Our approach will be to end the temporary foreign worker program so that Canadian jobs go to Canadian workers, to bring the numbers down, bring in the right numbers and the right people to fill jobs we actually need to have filled, for which there are no Canadians, to keep criminals out of this country by having stronger security standards at our borders, and always and everywhere to put Canada first in all of our immigration decisions.
Anyways, I was glad to be here, and I like the fact that I'm having a chance to put a question. I'm trying to stay on topic. There was a question by Canadian Press about immigration and how the immigration consensus is being destroyed by the Liberals, and I thought that was a good question. But I thought I would focus on the issue of the day, which was home building. Anyways, I'll keep you posted. I appreciate coming to these press conferences, and I also know that Mark Carney refuses to allow conservative-leaning or independent journalists at his press conferences, despite making a promise to that effect to our alumnus, Cian Bexty, who's with Juno News. You might recall at the Leaders Debate, Bexty asked a question, or him or another person from Juno News, I can't remember, asked Mark Carney about the independent press. And do you remember? Mark Carney said, "Oh, you can come to my next press conference." Remember that?
Your entire campaign does seem to be predicated on putting you in the front and hiding the people that stood in lockstep with Justin Trudeau for the last 10 years. You're kind of hoping that Canadians won't connect the dots, that the people standing behind you in your caucus walked in lockstep with them. Regardless of what you say right now, Stephen Guilbeault made the carbon taxes life work. The man that moved Paul Bernardo from a maximum security prison is now your chief of staff. I'm wondering how you reconcile this and how you can trust their judgment when they thought those ideas were good ideas.
I'd say a couple of things to that rather odd question. First is that the candidates in this election for the Liberal Party, I mean, you go and see when I make an announcement. I don't think I've seen you at any of them, but next time you can come.
Spoiler alert, that was a lie. Mark Carney does not allow independent journalists to attend. We can only ask him questions like Halley's Comet once every 4 years when we get into those leaders' debates. I get the feeling, though, they'll find a way to block us before the next time. For Rebel News in Brampton, Ontario, I'm Ezra Levant. Rebel News covers housing issues because they are a direct result of mass over-immigration. We'll keep you posted on the subject more than the mainstream media will. Visit us and visit us often at rebelnews.com.